Great.
Well, Brandy, nice to see you again. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Yeah, nice to see you all again, even if it's virtually.
Yeah, virtually at least. I'm sure probably many of you remember Brandy joining us for a few of our meetings and stepping in along with or in a place of Allison when that role was needed. So glad to have you again with us here tonight.
Thanks.
It's a fairly simple agenda this evening, but a lot to cover. I know we're all looking forward to updates and hearing what's going on. Thought we'd start by welcoming everybody. There's lots of new faces and folks. So I don't know, Cindy or Jason, if you want to introduce some of your team. The most of the task force members, we all know each other, of course, but there's a lot of other faces. I'm trying to remember if I recognize everybody, but.
Okay, thanks. So from the county, myself and Jason, and I don't know, Mitzi, I thought you were here, but I don't see you.
I'm going to admit her. She was in the waiting room.
Okay, there she's connecting right now. So here comes Mitzi. And Jim or Liz, you want to introduce the OPSIS group?
Liz, go ahead.
Sure. I hope we're all pretty familiar at this point. Liz and Jim and Sina, who is our project architect, and you might was also worked on Gladstone with us, and Mona from Johnston, and then we have also Kurt and Brian from Lango Hansen, who should be familiar at this point too.
Great, and Sarah's also joined us, Sarah Ekman. So I think that's it.
And then we got Parker with PNC also with us. So I think that covers everybody. It.
All right. What a team. It's like Brady Bunch on steroids or something like that. This group. Anyway, good to see you all. I hope you've been having a good summer, doing well. Looking forward to getting some updates tonight. One new face that you might not know, but most of you may, Anita Blackmar is a new member of the Clackamas County Library Board and has been following a lot of the progress of this project closely. And so you might remember her from joining in on some public comments and some other meetings. She's also, if I recall correctly, a member of the district advisory group for Parks and Rec. So anyway, Anita has asked about joining our task force on a more official basis, and that seemed like a good move for us to make. Anita, why don't you say a few things about yourself and kind of clue us into for those who might not know your involvement in both the library and the Concord project.
Well, I've lived in Oak Grove since 2005. And the first thing I want to do is report on the campaign I'm part of to encourage the county commissioners to prioritize funding for the Oak Lodge and the Gladstone branches. Because there's still county funds in play and general fund dollars also, they will be allocated around the end of this month. So our advocacy campaign has included a Clackamas Review op-ed, 2 stations at the Oak Lodge Library where people can get copies of the article and fill out some cards about their support for the new library. And there's been a letter writing campaign to the BCC and public testimony at Thursday BCC meetings. And today at the BCC meeting, we had over 16 people show up in person and 11 people testified in person. 2 more testified by Zoom. And I'd say there was a pretty positive mood going on because I think it's nice for the commissioners to have this friendly subject, which is really less controversial than something like road tolls or Airbnbs, et cetera. So the work's not over. We need a steady stream of emails and people testifying, people filling out cards at the library at Oak Lodge, and some maybe Clackamas Review op-eds. I didn't get tuned into the Concord project as early as the rest of you. But now that I have, I am completely enchanted by the difference this civic center will make for Oak Lodge. Right now, we're a community with no center and no gathering place. But when I picture people gathering at Concord for classes and events and park time and all of the things the library will have to offer, I think it's a really great prospect, and I think it will be a game changer for us. So as Doug said, I'm on the Parks District Advisory Committee and the Library Advisory Board, and I would love to be on this task force too, because I want to stay informed about how things are progressing, and I would like to be involved in the recommendations that the task force makes.
Thanks, Anita. So I don't know if at this point, if there needs to be a motion. I'm trying to remember. It's been a while since we added new members. But I don't know if somebody would like to move that we approve adding Anita to our task force.
I so move.
Thanks, Grover.
Seconded.
All right, Kim. All those in favor of adding Anita to our task force, raise your hand.
Votes yes.
Thanks for voicing your hand, Shonda. So I think that's unanimous. All right, welcome, Anita. Thanks. We're glad to have you joining us.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. So I think that's on to our discussion of the review of library and park design, where we're at this point. And I don't know who's taking it from here. Jim, is that on to you?
Brandy.
Is Sina running? Oh,
I will be sharing my screen and then Brandy will kick us off, but give me just a second to share my screen.
Yeah, and while you're doing that, Sina, I'll just remind everyone that we are recording this meeting. So just so you know, and then also feel free to type your questions or comments in the chat, especially if you're having any technical difficulties. Please do that. And then as we go through the presentation, please make sure that you stay muted so that the presenters can be heard by all of the participants tonight. And then we will have time for questions and answers, and we will be having some meeting breakout times so that we can talk in some smaller groups to allow you all to be able to talk. So I think I want to just reiterate just quickly the point of how I can help you all tonight is really making sure that we stay on our agenda so that you all can be heard and you can get the updates, like Doug said, that you're interested in hearing about. We are here, the meeting goals are to communicate the design evolution up to this point and then clarify next steps and the role of the task force moving forward. I'll be helping us stay on time. So I may put some notes in the chat or just kind of give you a flag that we're getting short on time, but we do have a lot of information to present. The site and park presentation, then library, then we'll have some breakout room discussions. Then we will report back as a large group about those discussions. And then we will talk about the design timetable and public art subcommittee before we get into public comments, where every person who would like to speak tonight has 3 minutes to give comments, and then we'll wrap up the meeting. So I think I'm able to hand this over now to Sina.
Yeah, and I think we touched on this slide already with team introductions. I'm one of the new people, so I'm glad to be here. It's nice to meet you all. And then I will skip to the site and park design conversation that Kurt and Brian will be leading.
great. Thank you, Sina. And it's great to see everyone again and new faces as well. I'd like to go through the park design. What we're really excited about tonight is that it's what it seemed like the last couple of years, we've been mostly looking at plan views of the park. We've been able to, in addition to working with OPSIS and their 3D model, we are going to be presenting some perspectives tonight. So I want to be able to kind of get to those. But first, I just want to do a brief refresh on the park design. Many of you have seen this plan a number of times. That's where we left off last time with the freestanding library, the kind of large, generous open space of flexible green space, the idea of a inclusive play area, trails, the amphitheater, parking, all have remained basically the same, but we've begun to fine tune and get into the details a little bit more. Sina, if you want to go to the next slide. What we thought would be helpful was just to talk a little bit more about really how layered this park site is in terms of the different spaces that we are creating for really people, children of all ages. What you see in red is the what we are showing as a loop trail. And certainly as the old elementary school becomes reused, there's different ideas where that can be expanded, but that was one thing that we heard last time that was really important to everyone, was the idea of making kind of a loop circuit. And as people move through that, you can see that there's a lot of spaces that are multidimensional, beginning with that open lawn, which is really both a space that can have movie nights, but it's open, very flexible. The play area that I mentioned about it being centered around inclusive play, so really accessible for children of all ages and abilities. The idea near Olive Street of entering through kind of a grove of trees. Certainly we want to add a lot of trees throughout the park to create a lot of shade, really concentrating on a lot of native plants, kind of indigenous plant material, but the idea of having picnics under the grove of trees we thought could be quite enchanting. As we get closer to the library, there's the amphitheater, really a multi-use space where you could have small performances, the potential for a water feature. We know that that is being considered as an alternate, but certainly how that could help activate the space. The north entry, thinking about maybe kiosks or wayfinding, how you get through the park. And then as we move over to the east side of the library, we've talked a lot about that space in between the school and the library, and having that small kind of breakout space, that small meeting space that's part of the library, and thinking about opportunities not only here, but throughout the site for interpretation. We almost see this space here being a story garden of something that talks about or interprets different aspects of the natural environment, the history of the site, something that's very tactile and textured as you walk along that trail from the library entry to that back area. And certainly in front of the library, having this kind of open kind of park plaza space, an area for events, spill outs, gathering, and certainly drop-offs. And lastly, in front of the elementary school, the idea of a history walk, of having interpretive signage, something that really speaks to the history of the building and how it has contributed to the neighborhood, you know, for many, many years. So if we go to the next slide, this is just a couple little images of that story garden, of ways that we can really take that space and make it a positive space, a learning space, something that is very artful and intentional. If you go to the next slide. So what I want to do is we have about 5 or 6 different images, and I just want to kind of let you know where they are. The very first one is kind of standing near the drop-off area, kind of looking towards the play area. The second one, we have a couple looking at the amphitheater space. The third one is up north near the smaller parking lot. It's kind of looking at the open lawn. And then the last one is looking through the Grove entry from Olive Street. So if you go to the first kind of 3D image, so this is the perspective from the drop-off looking into the park. And as you can see, there are lots of different areas for people to gather, seating spaces The library is right to your right. The play area, you get a sense of the play elements to the left. We think that it's really important to have seating areas next to the play area so that parents can sit and watch their kids. And then over in between the library and that kind of larger green space, you begin to see those amphitheater steps that kind of step up, that take up the grade. And then into the distance is that great lawn. So really a lot of dimension, I think, to this park space, and a lot of places for people to gather, be by themselves or be in groups. If we go to the next image, it concentrates a little bit more on that kind of smaller tiered seating amphitheater. The thing that we really wanted to do, and I think we heard from a lot of people, is the way that nature kind of intersects the built environment in this park is very important. So when we thought about these tiered steps, we didn't really want to make them really hard and angular, but we kind of extended them into the landscape and thinking about opportunities for planting to come in those areas to really begin to soften the edge. And then here you see really the direct relationship between what's happening inside the library and then outside in this smaller event space. If you go to the next slide, it shows the opportunity for a water element. Now, we know that, you know, budgetary wise, we would love to have a water element. We don't want to make it too complex. But we want to have something simple, something active that I think that kids would really enjoy. So this is just one idea that when it's on, it's very active and kids are playing in it. When it's off, it still becomes an amphitheater-like seating area. The next slide takes you up to the upper area near Stafford, kind of looking down onto the kind of green open space. And this shows the intersection of those two trails near the parking lot. So this is a fairly level, very open, flexible space. You can imagine kids playing pickup games. There can be nighttime movies. I think very large and generous kind of grass that is really kind of multi-use and flexible. You go to the next image. So this is from Olive Street, where we have the picnic grove. So this is where we really want to try to get some kind of larger trees. We'd love to do that day one. We're planting some bigger trees with some larger canopies. And then within that, we've kind of nestled picnic tables throughout the space. You see the play area in the distance. Now, the play area itself hasn't been fully designed. This is really more of just something to for you to begin to think about how it may ultimately be a combination of kind of natural elements, certainly inclusive, where kids are able to make their way through the space, whether they're in wheelchairs or just the mobility of it offers a lot of different dimension to it. I do want to mention that although we're not showing, and I think we shared in a couple of previous slides, the idea of benches are really placed throughout the park next to trees. We're showing picnic tables, trash receptacles, bike racks. All those furnishing elements will be part of the ultimate design. So I think this may be the last slide, but just in summary, I think after looking at the plan view for so many years, it has been really great to begin to think about these things three-dimensionally because the park does have a lot of topography and the ways that can be kind of naturally integrated into the open space. We're really happy about.
Thank you, Kurt. I think in the interest of time, we are going to kind of move into the library portion of the presentation, but we want to encourage any kind of clarifying questions in the chat, and we will definitely return to those at the end of the meeting. And so Jim is going to lead this conversation. So, actually, Mona's going to start us off with.
Could you just go back one slide, please?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to acknowledge that with the library design that Mona is going to walk us through, updates on the interior layout and the benefits of that, where it sits. And then really a major focus is really on the exterior. I just want to acknowledge that we've received a lot of feedback from members of the task force and have some thoughts to address what we think are good concerns. So let's move forward.
Okay, thanks, Jim. So to start off, we thought it would be helpful to compare the current library plan with the previous plan when the library was attached to the Concord School. It's interesting to see these side by side. The one on the left is the previous plan when the library was attached. The one on the right is the current plan. You can really see clearly in comparing these two plans how separating the library building from the school yielded a number of benefits related to the efficiency and the functionality of the library. So in the attached plan, the library workroom was actually inside the Concord School. So some of the library spaces were constrained by the geometry of the existing building. You can see that in the long light pink area is the workroom in the old plan. It had a pretty significant visual and spatial separation between the central spaces of the library and the workroom, and that really wasn't very ideal for surveillance by library staff or really the functions of the workroom. So the current design, the workroom is located much closer to the central areas of the library, which not only provides better connection and oversight, but it's also just a more efficient use of space. The circ desk in the new plan is also closer to the children's area, and it's clearly visible through glass walls at the corner, so there's more of a visual connection there. We've also maximized the amount of glass at the edges that face the park, so that would be down and to the left on this plan to really increase the transparency and connection to the park. And also the stacks have been consolidated into the center of the plan to really prioritize the seating, lounge space and study along that edge. We also cleanly separated the multi-purpose room to provide after hours access. So now rather than going through the shared lobby inside the Concord School to get to an after hours meeting in the multi-purpose room, the library has its own lobby, which is connected to restrooms and the multi-purpose room, and can be closed off from the rest of the library during after hours. The landscape, as Kurt showed earlier, the landscape grade at the left side of the plan has also been manipulated to increase the direct connection there between the park and an adjacent space that could be used potentially for outdoor story time. So Sina, I think you can move on. This is a close-up of the plan, the current plan with the collections identified. So you can see the main entry is located at the bottom right side of the plan where the double doors are. And those doors lead into a lobby space that connects the multi-purpose room in yellow to the two restrooms in gray. And then you can take a left to enter into the main library space. The friends sale area is just to the right of the entry, and the circ desk is right there near the front entry as well. The staff workroom here is in the light kind of tannish pink color at the top of the plan. And then the main collection is all of the darker pink areas. So you can see the children's area in the upper left side of the plan and the teen area in the lower right. There are a couple of small meeting rooms adjacent, and a history room adjacent to the workroom, just below the workroom, and another study room adjacent to the teen area. And then there's a lot of cozy lounge space, some that there's space we're calling the Hearth right now, which is adjacent to the park on the left side of the plan. That's the current plan.
Thank you, Mona.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Jim.
Yeah, so on the exterior, we were compelled to rewind the tape a bit, and certainly members from the task force have shared this image, which goes back to the master plan, where this is kind of the first attempt at looking at the exterior. And there were some positive aspects to this that, you know, in reflection, members of the task force felt were positive. Some of the vertical windows instead of just horizontal windows. There was also, not only with the library, but the entry, the notion of kind of a additive element in terms of this canopy. And a third point to bring up was even feedback from the task force that, gosh, there's so much glass separating the addition in this case from the original building. There's no connectivity between them. And in a sense, this was kind of a first pass. And, you know, as we move forward, we started to have more conversations also with historic architect, Matt Davis, the Architectural Resource Group, who was really kind of a collaborator with thinking about how the addition could start to feel more integrated and an extension in some ways of the school. We did this analysis, many of you will probably remember this, that as we really took a close look at the Concord School, one of the more interesting aspects of it was this kind of lower datum line where the windows are smaller below and then larger above. And then also the idea of moving the main entry into the gable form. Like the main entry to the building right now of the Concord School's in the middle in a gable shape. It's carved into that, that brick form. And we felt that, and so did the historic architect, that going into that brick bay form on the left was really a positive move. And then to think about opening up the transparency really at the lower level and having more brick above that relates to the kind of massing of the Concord School. Also, it was a consideration as well about sustainability, and we know that's a west orientation. As we go more to the north, we can have more clear and large glass opening up to the park. But on the west side, there's a real consideration to how we need to think about filtering daylight coming in. You can go to the next slide. So just a reminder of the character of the existing building with these entries made by removing the brick and having these recesses. Also the ornamental brick, that's such an interesting distinguishing quality at the gable ends. And how could one think about brick and creating pattern and relief that could harken back and draw from this pattern. So this is going back when we finished schematic design in 2001 with the attached library. This was a view we shared, and frankly, for those of you on the task force, which is most of you, this was really well received. Everyone felt, wow, this is really sensitive to the Concord School, draws some of the DNA of the building, but it also feels very contemporary. You can go to the next slide. Some other views of the datum lines and relationships. Also, I'll mention that in this particular layout, the brick wall kind of dematerialized and created a brick screen that filtered daylight into the library. Although the windows in the library facing west were at that, I think 9 or 10 foot datum line. They weren't tall windows back in the schematic design. And there was these bays that were created, which as we started to look at cost was one of the items we felt simplifying that wall would be an appropriate thing to do. But there were qualities here that I think were really positive. So let's go to the next image. Just another view looking back. Again, this is the prior view. This is where, you go to the next one. This is the, where we sit, or where we sat at 30% schematic design, and that 30% is an important percentage. It's not 100% schematic design, but I think what you can see is there was a direct relationship back to where we had left it previously. That was very intentional. This wasn't a totally new departure. Some of the things and feedback we received that I think really resonates with us is the brick feels heavy. You know, it feels, it's not open enough or transparent. Can we add vertical windows? Those were some of the comments. And another comment, probably from ourselves, was we had, when we pulled the library away, we thought, well, maybe there's an opportunity to start to shape the profile of the roofs or shed roof shapes. And, you know, in hindsight, we actually think that works against us. The prior options that we showed had more of a flat roof. This was the gesture back to the gable roof. And in some ways, it's not strong enough on its own to have that dialogue, and in some ways maybe fights against the gable roof. So those were ideas that kind of made us think moving forward, what are some things we can do to make this a better design? Go to the next image. This led us to this very simple analysis where we were at 30% schematic design, and then some new ideas about including vertical glass that faces out towards the west. We already have a large window, as you know, facing the park, but we feel like these larger windows here can address some of the feedback that we received, and also in the process kind of break down the scale of the solid brick wall. And the thought here is to create a brick screen that extends across those tall windows. So we get the tall windows, but we also filter that west light. And we've done an energy analysis on this, and that's a really important thing to do. Whereas the large window facing the park, because it's more towards the north, actually it's fine not having any sort of screen on it. You can go to the next image. So this is, these are some views of where we sit currently. The brick screen harkens back to the brick, more detailed pattern on the gable roof ends. And then that screen's just located where we have the taller windows that go up full height. Let me go to the next image. One of the things we did too is kind of consider more landscape that separates the arrival steps from the ramp, where the ramp feels like it's really leading into that story garden. The story garden being a really interesting little kind of pocket park. Also, it wasn't mentioned, but the meeting room actually opens up to an outdoor space there, and there's a connecting path that goes from the stair landing of what will become the community center, and it's a shortcut across the library. We ended up creating a lower soffit area, plaster soffit that creates a more intimate zone where there's the book drop off and also book lockers. So one can drop off a book there after hours or pick up a book after hours. And then next to that is where we have the two-story glass window. And that's a two-story space when you walk into the library. So it's a really beautiful uplifting space, and it feels right to have that two-story glass there. Go to the next image. This is coming around the corner. You can start to see also that west wall starts to break down with the brick screen, and then we get the larger window that doesn't require a screen that opens up to the park, and then the views of the amphitheater. You can go to the next image. And then this one's pretty, we thought was really important. This is kind of a first rendering of what this might feel like at night, where you start to get these larger full height windows that become really illuminate then the brick screen and start to really break down the scale of the brick wall. You still have the continuity of the brick as is found on the Concord School, but it's a much lighter, airier feel. We're also looking at, you know, the detailing of how the brick meets the soffit and the infill walls that are white, and making that a really kind of a more minimalist kind of edge condition. So the brick doesn't feel as heavy. It feels like a lighter material, but it draws from the DNA of the Concord School. This is really a campus in a sense. And it's really, we think it's important to have the library and the community center really relate to each other. And I think this illustrates really well what we think is an appropriate response is really a weaving of the horizontal with the vertical. It's not one or the other, but when you bring the two together, you start to get a really interesting, I think, and really memorable architecture that as a as a team, we're all really excited about.
All right, thank you, Jim. Mona.
Yeah, thank you, Sina. These next 3 slides are perspectives from the interior of the library. So we'll just go through these relatively quickly. This first one is from essentially the main entrance circ desk area. You can see the wedge-shaped, the plan diagram with a little wedge shape at the top right hand of the screen. That's where we're taking the perspective from. So it's right by the circ desk, looking down the main circulation spine of the library. You can see this beautiful clerestory window wrapping around the upper level and the roof and letting in some really nice daylight, not a lot of direct daylight, but really diffuse daylight mostly. So that is going to be great for the lighting of the interior of the space. The main collections on the left, new and popular material and periodicals on the right, meeting rooms farther to the right where you can see the wall and some glass, and then down at the end of the library there you can see that big wall of glass that connects directly to the park beyond.
And I might just add that really the focus here is to bring the park into the library, right? You can feel that. And the other thing I want to respond to is at one point in value engineering, way back when we had a discussion, we did not have cross-laminated timber roof, but that is part of the project. It's actually called a Dow laminated timber, and it forms, it works acoustically, which is really exciting that it's integral instead of having this beautiful wood ceiling and then having to hang an acoustical ceiling below it.
Right. This is a perspective from that hearth area that we were talking about earlier that's directly adjacent to the glass that connects to the park. So that's at the far end of the library, and there are lounge seating there. And then at the end of this perspective, you can see the children's area with another large window that wraps around and connects to that side of the park as well.
And that window comes right really basically to the ground plane, which is about 8 feet up. So it's almost from the north side, or excuse me, the east side, very similar to what's happening with the large window to the park. So it makes the library feel like it's really part of the park environment.
Mm-hmm. And then this is a perspective view of the teen area. So that's at the bottom of the plan, at the plan south side of the plan. And you can see here the tall glass areas that Jim was talking about earlier with the brick screen beyond, and it really creates this beautiful filtered light coming in from that side of the building, and sort of a more intimate area that defines the teen zone. And again, there's a lot of glass here, so the connection to the park here is quite obvious, I think.
All right, I think that concludes the library piece. We have just 2 more slides on sustainability that I will cover. And then we will move on to the next segment. And again, quick reminder, if there are questions, any kind of clarifying questions, other questions, to please put them in the chat. Thanks, Jim and Mona. I just wanted to highlight quickly a few of the sustainable design strategies that have been part of this project from the very beginning. We kind of broke them up into 4 categories: energy, water, materials, and ecology. On the energy side, I think you're all aware that we're going to have a PV array on the roof. And I have a slide that kind of shows you where that's located and what we're able to cover in terms of energy use. And that is, of course, for the 1.5% for green energy technology. We also have an energy efficient mechanical system. Even though we moved away from the radiant slab, we have a VRF system that is very comparable in terms of energy efficiency. Low energy LEDs throughout. We are maximizing natural daylight, and Jim and Mona spoke to that. And then we are also applying strategic overhangs and sun screening, and that's the brick screen and also the overhang at the main entry. In terms of water, low flow plumbing fixtures, we also have some stormwater runoff areas that we are working with Kurt and Brian and his team on designing. We are using durable exteriors in the brick, healthy interior materials. That's something that we always pay attention to when we're working through our finishes. And then as Jim mentioned, yes, we have a mass timber roof structure, the DLT, the Dow laminated timber structure. And then in terms of ecology, we have bird-friendly glazing in areas where we need it to prevent bird-related accidents. And then obviously we have these very strong connections and views out to the park. And then last slide I'll show, this is a roof plan. So you're looking down, you're seeing the upper volume here and the lower volume, that kind of L-shaped wrapping around down here in gray. And we are able to cover the upper roof area with what we are required to provide for the 1.5% green energy. And that is a 72 kilowatt array, and it covers about 63%. This is a number we got from our engineers of the library's energy use.
There was a question about VRF.
Yes.
Can you explain that, Sina?
That is our heating and cooling system.
And it's, you mentioned it's comparable to the radiant slab. I mean, the percentage difference is very...
I think it's around 5% is what we received from Interface. So it's minimal. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Great. So there were a couple of clarifying questions, and then I think Christy also mentioned that we didn't approve the meeting minutes from last time, and she wasn't there, and so that is a correction that needs to take place. So I'm hoping that we can just address some of those clarifying questions. I'm just scrolling back up to those. So one was, Christy asked, I don't see any pictures with the shelter in them. It also is listed as future. Does that mean we aren't getting the shelter?
Yeah,
I can. I was going to go ahead and talk to that,
Jason.
Yeah, right now we're not expecting it to be, but it's kind of like the water feature. It's an alternate, and we'll look at it and see how it fits within the budget. But I think what Kurt's trying to do is we'll plan a spot for it, and we'll just have to see how the budget works out in the end.
Yes.
Great. Any other clarifying questions before we have you do your meeting minutes, housekeeping, and then we go into our breakout rooms for discussions? I see Grover's physical hand raised.
I couldn't find the hand raise section of the other part. So I had a couple of quick questions. First of all, I really appreciate that previous comments were taken into account. Thank you, Jim, for very nicely outlining many of them and showing the responses to that. So I appreciate that muchly. Some questions, and I don't want the answers this minute, but I would like to know, like, so we said that the water element's going to be put on hold. If we could have some idea what the cost is, so people could look at fundraising for things like that, et cetera, so we'd have some idea of what that water element would be. The other is does it somewhere going to show us what the square footage of the multi-purpose room is? Because it seems small, and we already are suffering from small where we are now. And so I'd at least like to know how that compares. As far as in the teen area, first, I really like the idea of putting that integrated wood ceiling, but when you showed the picture of the teen area, it showed the white of your two contrasting ones with white and then that wood. Mm-hmm. So is that not going to be a similar wood piece? And then the last two questions are, I know from talking to people at the West Lynn Library, as an example, they had a flat roof and they said you should never have a flat roof in a library in Oregon. And so they've had a lot of problems with that. And I hear that we're back to a flat roof. And so I just want to know how that's been addressed. And then the last question is, I love the vertical windows. My only question is on the one over the entrance where you have the screening over it, that's a 2-story and it does not shine into the library at any time. So could that have less of that screening, at least on that one window, to make that more distinctive? That was my only question about. I appreciate the screening. I appreciate the light. And then my very last question is where can you see the sunset on this site without having it be obscured? Because it's a beautiful sunset. Okay, those are my questions, and thanks. And I don't like to type, and I can't type and talk at the same time.
No worries, no worries. So we are at our time to go into the breakout rooms, and Grover, I'm wondering if we can, Jim will be in the meeting breakout room with you, and so maybe we can get answers to that, and then we can report those back to the group at the end. Doug, can we do a quick meeting minutes? I see that also Kim was not at the last meeting, so that should be revised as well.
Yeah, I was just trying to track down the minutes.
I'm not sure that was a meeting, actually. I think it was it's a presentation on a volunteer basis, from what I remember. It doesn't matter to me. You can approve whatever, but I'm not sure that was an actual meeting.
Well, there must have been minutes because Christy saw her name on there and she wasn't there. So, and I don't know.
That we called. It was a meeting that we had initiated.
Unless it's Christy's talking about a meeting different from the last one. I was digging through and all I found was an agenda for this meeting. I didn't see any minutes unless I'm missing that. So
it's a July 14 minutes, and it was put up. And it does have Christy and Jan Lindstrom as being present. And I don't know if Kim Parman was at that meeting either.
Kim put in the chat that she was not there.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying. I got the list here and you listed all those people of being there, and Jan Lindstrom wasn't there either. So that just as a point of clarification, there was something published under the name of meeting notes for the July 14th meeting. So whether there's an official meeting or not, I don't want to get into that part, but.
Here, can everybody see the screen?
Yes.
So
there it is.
You're saying Jan wasn't there?
Correct. She's no longer on the task force. She's officially withdrawn.
Okay. And are there other changes?
Kim, the name after Dennis, up at the top. Yeah, that's right. And then Christy right under my name.
Obviously they're in spirit.
Yes, of course.
Right.
All right. Any other changes? Doug, how do you do this?
Just like that, we'd say, are there any other changes to be made to the minutes?
I would like to, at some point, if this is going to become anything official, would like to clean up a little bit of what the motion was. I don't have the exact wording in front of me right now, but the motion.
Here's the motion right here.
Right. I can't give you the exact wording, but that didn't work for me as far as what I remember, and we couldn't go back and listen to it. So it's only from memory. That's okay. So, okay. Because there was a lot of discussion about approximate and whatever, but I don't want to rehash that. It's close enough, but I just want to say that that's not exactly accurate as I remember.
Well, why don't you can just send me an email about it. I think from my memory, this was really close. I mean, this was the intent, so.
Grover, could you live with this?
I made the motion, so I think it's fairly correct.
Okay.
And so I hear that Grover's feeling like it's maybe not exactly accurate, but maybe you could live with it. Is that true, Grover?
Since it's not an official document, I can live with it, of course.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Doug, what do you do next?
I don't know. What do you guys want to do? Let's see here. I think, well, is this where you had us going to breakout groups? Oh, no. Yeah.
Do you need to do anything else with the meeting?
No.
No.
Are there any other changes to be made to the meetings? Does somebody want to vote to the notes that is? Does somebody want to vote to approve them as they are? With those changes of taking out the people who were not present.
I'm hearing nothing. So I'm wondering if that could be revisited via email. Is that possible for how you all run things?
Did people have a chance to review the minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's then just with those changes, I think. Does anybody want to move that we approve the minutes?
I see. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as they're listed here with the changes that we just made.
Okay, does anybody want to second that? We have several people who weren't there for that, so they can't approve those.
You can just list them as unapproved.
Okay.
Yep. I guess we're gonna go with that.
All right. Well, and in the sake of time, I think we'll jump into our breakout rooms. So we'll open this up. Task force members have been assigned. We will record these, we will take notes, and then we will report back to the larger group. Cindy and Liz will stay in the main room and hopefully assign any task force members that were accidentally left off the assignments. And here we go.
And so so she could not participate in that, but I think the comments, the little bit of feedback, there really wasn't any organizers
on the website.
How come we're recording and then not recording and then recording and not recording and so on?
Because you don't have the technical people in the room.
But that became a problem with that last task force meeting that we had when they didn't record anything. And I took notes and the notes didn't match what you put out, Cindy.
I'm sorry that I didn't record it. It was my screw up. I totally take responsibility for it.
Well, that's why I'm concerned about this recording and not recording of what we're saying right now.
Well, I had pressed it was on pause and I had pressed to record because I thought, well, maybe it's screwing up the individual rooms. So anyway, the meeting won't be recorded. This part is going to be on and off.
Yeah, the recording was going on consistently up until the breakouts. Then it's impossible to record 4 different breakouts or whatever the breakout number is. So that might be a little bit sketchy. So the one gentleman who joined the meeting, Cindy, is he the contractor?
Parker?
Yeah, Parker.
He's right there. Yes,
that's me.
Yeah, he's the construction. He's our CMGC, our construction manager, general contractor.
Okay, great.
For both libraries. And they're just finishing up the demolition, yes, of Gladstone?
It's starting. Well, we have the abatement done.
Right.
Firefighters just finished their training. They did about a week and a half of training through the building. And we have everything set up and pre-inspected for the demolition that'll start Monday. So that's moving along very well.
And then we're going to have a little mini celebration October 11th once the building is demolished. You're all invited.
Oh, good.
So I want to note also that the contractor that has the contract for the libraries is the same contractor that built our fire station in Oak Lodge. I don't know how many of you know that, but I happen to be aware of the contractor.
Yeah, that's funny. I grew up in Oak Grove down on River Road my whole life, and my great grandma lived on right by Oak Grove Elementary School there. And the guy that hired me on to this company 15 years ago, and now I'm an owner of the company, he built that fire station, or he was a project manager on that in 1990, I believe. So, or 92, somewhere in there.
Well, back in the 1970s, he built a house for my ex-husband and I up on the top of Council Crest too.
Oh, so is that Pettyjohn or Campbell?
Yeah, Ray Pettyjohn.
Okay. Wow, we've got a conference room named after him.
He was a great guy.
Right. So he started PNC in 1961, I believe. So he was a few years into it as a, out of his truck with a business partner, and grew it to a $130 million a year company, what it is now. So,
yep.
Cindy, what's the plan for the rest of this meeting after they're done with the meeting rooms, and how long is that going to be, and what happens after that?
Okay, so good question. They're wrapping up. I think they have 30 seconds left in the meeting rooms. We're then going to talk about the timetable, the design timetable, what to expect over the several months. And we're going to talk about the Public Art Subcommittee and public comments.
Great.
Welcome back, everyone. All right, well, we're gonna do some quick report outs to hear what you all talked about. So Liz, do you wanna go first?
Sure. I think we had a conversation. I think in general, our group felt like the design's moving forward in a positive direction. Some ideas about how we can really emphasize where the entry is and enhance that transparency. That the process has been slow, but it feels like we're making progress, and that feels good. Some great ideas about electrical outlets and usability at the main lawn, and enhancing sustainability, and making sure that we're working through this program with the group and Mitzi, and ensuring that it can it still fits their needs and how the library functions.
Great. Sina, can you give a report out?
Yeah, and maybe Mona, you can help me out with the second piece. We kind of spent some time talking about the loop trail and the park, and everybody really appreciated that. We had some comments around where it kind of loops up on the plan north side, and kind of what that looks like, where the parking lot is, and if there's potentially kind of a safety concern, and if there's maybe a way to kind of look at that and see where it exactly routes behind the building. Definitely also interest in potentially extending the trail to include the Concord property and making that loop a little longer, so that it kind of frees up a little bit of space between the buildings too, and makes that space maybe a little quieter if there's an option to go all the way around if you're really into exercising. We also talked about the opportunities for art, specifically native art that speaks to the history of the land, not just the school, but going farther back within the history walk area, but also within the story garden. And then we kind of transitioned, Mona, to talking about the children's area a little bit.
Sure, yeah. We talked a little bit about how at Happy Valley, the story time was immediately moved into the larger meeting room space from the children's area because it was so popular and so many kids were attending. So making sure that there was potentially storage associated with the meeting room that had art supplies and other potential story time props there, so that you could also easily move story time into that area if needed. We also talked a little bit about the Hearth Space, and that Hearth should be in quotes, so possibly not necessarily a literal hearth, but hearth feeling. And then about the children's area also, I think there was a lot of excitement around playful design, incorporating playful children-focused, children-oriented design in the children's area.
Wonderful, thank you. In our group, there was a question about the teen area soundproofing, and it sounds like it's a different ceiling material than the other wood soundproofing. Jim, correct me if I'm saying any of this wrong, because I'm not an architect. The meeting room size was expected to be about 700 to 800 square feet, and just mentioning the relationship to the community center and the proximity there. There was the question about the flat roof in Oregon, and Jim clarified that it's a flat parapet, but the roof is pitched. So there would be enhanced membranes and everything to deal with the water. There was a lot of conversation about the what to do with the elements that were really important to the community, but couldn't be funded at this time. So the water feature and the shelter, the exterior shelter for families, were both really important to the group. And really there was a concern about making sure that those elements don't get lost for future planning and fundraising, and thinking about some other ways that those funds could be found, such as fundraising. And that people were really liking the features and bringing the park in. And I think there was just, there was also the issue of wanting to make sure that the structure was seismically safe and secure. And Jim reassured the group that it will be, and that all of the pieces that the design has incorporated recently will all be seismically secure. Great. I think, is there anything else from the three groups before we, let's see, oh, we're a little over time. If we've missed something, maybe just put it in the chat, because we do want to get to the design timetable and the public art subcommittee, and then leave room for our public comments. So design timetable.
That would be me.
Okay.
Yep, I'll start sharing my screen again. We just have a few slides that help speak to that. There we go. And I just need to find the right spot. Go.
Thanks, Anna.
All right.
So I sent this out to folks at, I think it was last week. So again, just to go over the timetable, schematic design has been occurring. Obviously, we're in the task force meeting. And then from October to January, we're looking at the design development phase. And then we will also, what we will plan on doing is sending the task force updates as we go through these processes through the construction document phase. And so we are not planning on calling meetings of the task force, but we will send you updates, which is something we've also been doing with the Gladstone task force. And then we'll talk a little bit about the Art Subcommittee. I think that Jason will talk, there were some folks that were identified on the subcommittee, and there's some things that they'll be doing over the coming months. And then January to May is with the construction document phase. And around that time, we will also be working obviously with Parker on estimates. So this is again from the charter that talks about the role of the task force really does morph and change to receiving periodic project updates, disseminating project information to the community, and providing community feedback. So we can take that down. Any questions or comments? And one last thing I would like to mention, and Commissioner Savas, we've talked about this, having some kind of a celebration. Thank you, probably after the first of the year. Grover, you had a comment, question.
It is that when I read on the timeline, it talks about developed building materials, finishes, and the like. And you talked about in Gladstone, they actually had a chance to weigh in on the finishes and so on and so forth. So I'm wondering about that. But the other part is that is the master plan done? Because with that comment you just had there said the master plan was done, and in fact what we submitted was accepted, but then rejected for lack of funding, and we went down a whole different path. So have we actually finished our participation in the design, because that spoke as it was already decided and the master plan was done? So I have a question about that.
So from our perspective, the master plan was done. It was submitted. We did have change that we're not planning on doing another full master plan, because the structure, the library really embodies many of the values and the conversations that were part of the master planning process. So those haven't changed. It's the design of the facility has.
Correct. And our part in that design, because I was in the meeting, I listened to the meeting when it was decided that we would move on and that we wouldn't stop. And so only the actual moving forward on the building was on pause, but it did say that the design process would continue. And it never said that the staff would do that only, and which is what this interpretation is putting on there. And that's the only part I don't know where that came from. I saw that in the document from you, but I re-listened to that meeting multiple times, and it says that the design will continue.
So Grover, you're just wanting to get clarification on the role of the task force, is that right?
That's correct. And upon what is it based? Because I heard one thing from the Board of County Commissioners, and then I saw in writing something saying that, well, we'll just keep you posted and hope you like it.
Yeah, and my understanding, Cindy, is that the task force will be similar moving forward as the Gladstone task force. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, I'm not quite sure what your question is, but I think we've had extraordinary input into this library, and changes have been made, and it's evolved over time based on the input from this task force. And so not quite sure what additional input. At some point we have to go forward, and this is the time that we believe we need to do that.
Okay, if I'm still get a chance, what do you mean by we go forward? Nobody said we should stop. No, nobody asked about stopping, but right, you made it very clear that we'll just keep you posted, as opposed to, and here's the next update, and here's the next update. No, we'll just keep you posted. We'll send the emails. So that was the big shift for me, and I don't know where that came from.
I don't know what to. I'm not.
I think my understanding of the task of this group was, getting to the point where we did come up with a master plan, and we had that approved, and we all voted on that, and then moving forward. This was even with Catherine Krieger, as we were talking back when she was still involved in the project. At this point, it was yes, keeping us posted, letting us know what kinds of where things are at in terms of progress and the process, and then checking in with us when there were things that the design team said, this would be a good place to get some more feedback, and so that this group is here for that purpose. At this point is when situation might come around to say, okay, what are we thinking? We've got some options, and if the design team says, well, neither one is going strong one way or the other, but it would be sure nice to know what the community is thinking on this, and let's get some feedback from the task force. Then at that point, checking in with us and getting some more input. Kind of input as needed. And I think that's kind of, I don't know, Cindy, if that's I feel like that's kind of what we had talked about.
Okay. Well, it is time to take our public comments. So I would like to, we don't have to stop completely, but I would like to let the public who are in attendance raise your hands or put your name into the chat if you would like to give 3 minutes of verbal testimony or comments.
Brandy, we need you to the Public Art Subcommittee.
Oh, I'm so sorry. You're right.
So it won't take very long to talk about it. So I don't know if everybody remembers, but way back in June of 2021, we asked for people to step up and volunteer for being on the Art Subcommittee. So from back then, there was 4 members that were interested in participating. That was Rose, who's no longer on the task force, Kim, Jan, who's no longer, I guess, on the task force, and Christy. So I don't want to vote here, but if we want to add like maybe 1 or 2 more members, please let me know. Or if Kim or Shonda, or sorry, Kim or Christy.
Yeah, Shonda, I had my name on that list, I thought, in the beginning, but.
Yeah, I'll look because there was the history one and the art, but I can look to see which one you're on and let you know. But what I wanted to say is we would pick up these meetings. I think it said like either like December of this year or early part of next year, and there'd be roughly around 4 to maybe 5 meetings total to commit to for that. So I just wanted to throw that out there. We are looking for participation in that, and we would meet in the future, like I said, 4 to 5 times. So
and
if
Jason,
you're interested, let me know.
Yeah, do you want them to email you, Jason?
Yeah.
Okay, great. And is there a timeline when you need comments?
If we can just tie it to, I think we wanted comments for the presentation by the 15th. If you could comment by that time too, I think that'd be great.
Okay, so if you are interested in being part of the Public Art Subcommittee and you're a task force member, then let Jason know by the 15th, which I think is next Thursday. Yeah, next Thursday. So, okay, great. All right, I think now we're ready for public comment, if there's anyone. Okay, I see Elizabeth, and go ahead and just raise your hands and I will go ahead and call on people as indicated, and let me just get the timer started. Okay, Elizabeth, go ahead.
Hello, I was at the Board of County Commissioners meeting this morning, and I was very heartened to see all of the support for the library project. It's very important to me that we have a good library here. I have lived in Oak Lodge area for almost 33 years. I depend heavily on the library, and I was just so happy to see all those people speaking and sitting there just showing their silent support. That's all. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. All right. Would anyone else like to give any comments to the task force? Who's here from the public? I'm trying to take a look at the pictures. Okay, I see Thelma, and you can also raise your hand visually if you are interested. If you can't click that button, and you can always type it into the chat if you would like to give comment. Okay, Thelma, go ahead.
Okay. I've written down some comments. So this business of we'll just keep you posted does not sit well with me. It leaves the citizen out of everything if you don't continue having task force meetings. So I just object to that. When you stop the task force meetings, you can't provide any information to the public about what's going on. the reports from the arts and the history committees are lost in the woodwork because you, the task force, won't be getting any of those reports that the public can see and weigh in on. So that's my concern.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Thelma. Last comment, if there is anyone who would like to provide comment, please raise your hand. I see Carol Cookson.
Yeah, I like to weigh in with Thelma and Grover regarding the task force being involved in the ongoing project and not just be given, notices and emails. The people on the task force have put in a whole lot of effort and time to get us to where we are, and in making sure that the citizens of our community have had the ability to provide input. And I think that's really important for that to continue on.
Great. Thank you, Carol. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. I think those were all of the hands that I saw.
I'm on mute.
Oh, okay. Okay, great. So I think that this is now into our wrap up and adjournment. So Cindy, was there anything else that you would like to say?
At this point, we have, as I said, we've received extraordinary, wonderful input and conversations from the task force members, and the architects need to take all that which they have and continue doing their work. I think that you have provided extraordinary direction. I think you're being heard and listened to. And so I'm sorry if I didn't mean to offend anyone. What we're trying to say is we're going to the next phase of the process, which is taking all the input that you and the work that you've seen today and moving that forward in the design and construction process. We will send you information. There'll be information posted on the website. And so you provide extraordinary input, and we appreciate that. And we're really not trying to negate any of that. We're trying to move to the next phases to get to the design development phase, which is just more detail on the schematic phase, and then to the construction documents. So all the input you provided will continue going through.
Great. Thank you, Cindy. And Doug, I apologize. What are your closeouts?
Well, I do see Grover's got his hand up. So I think, Grover, you should, if you've got a final comment there to make, go ahead.
I really would. And I appreciate the several people who also weighed in. This is a community project. We wouldn't even be sitting here having this conversation if it wasn't the community that did the work they did 6, 7, 8 years ago, 4 or 5. Anyway, point is, we are at that point, and I'm sorry, Mark Elliott's not still on because he gave the architect's perspective. We are at this point right now that things will become permanent, and now it's too expensive to change anything now, as opposed to when we cross that, until we cross that threshold. So to have us wait until the next time we hear from anybody, well, it's too late to make any changes now, is the fearful, and we have been forewarned so many times. And I just want to make one comment for this group. I don't care that it's recorded. How we got here was we followed the instructions, we did the work, we submitted something that we all universally agreed on, and then I don't even want to read all the different ways it was described, but all of a sudden, oh, well, we can't afford that. This is a citizen driven and paid for project. And so I am quite concerned about moving. I want to move forward, but having it be that it just keeps going and it's too late to make changes, that's my concern. And I don't think there's been any response to, besides, well, thank you for your.
Well, I think, like I said, I think, and like it has been said, I think there's been a massive amount of input and there will continue to be input as needed. But we at this point, I think my understanding of the project is it's letting the architects, the design team, do their work. Yes, they have to make decisions based on what they've been given from us at this point. We've given them. It looks like I'm just even from these great designs we saw already this evening. It looks like they've responded to a lot to what the input they've gotten so far, and now they're just needing to move forward with that. I'm assuming they'll get back to us if there's some things that they need further input on. All right, everybody, we'll be in touch. Have a great evening. Take care.
Thank you.
Night.
Thanks, everyone.